All right, this is our 2024 Midwest Annual Training. Did everyone get their packet in the mail that had their new IEF in there and the new contract and a few other little handouts and stuff? If you did not get that, please put that information in the chat or reach out to your field monitor and we'll get that sent off to you right away. Oh, so this is the same one that this is the same PowerPoint presentation that I did for our in-person. So disregard the fact that this is in person or where our bathrooms are located or that we're asking you to clean up after yourself. Uh, we can disregard that slide. This year, Midwest sponsored 67 centers. Of those 67 centers, you guys served 1,663,253 meals and snacks. And you guys received back $2,349,712 in reimbursements. So that is super awesome. We would love to see those numbers even higher next year. On our agenda today, we're going to go over our record keeping, meal pattern, and infants. Our updated agreement. So we had to make some changes to our agreement. We had our NDE audit this year. Some of you may be aware of that because NDE may have gone out to your center. They encouraged us to make some changes to our contract. So we're going to go over just the changes on the contract, not the whole thing, but I do want to go kind of line by line with those. Please sign your contract and send it back to your field monitor as soon as possible. The only people that need to sign that are your directors or owners. That's, if you're just the cook or something, hand it off to your director or owner and let them do that. The rights and responsibilities of the center. We're just going through section 2 here. The center must have a current Nebraska license to be reimbursed for the food program. All changes to the center license must be communicated in writing to Midwest within 30 days. Please, please, please let us know when you make changes to your license. That is no fun when we find out well after the fact that you've changed your capacity, changed your hours, expanded your days of care, or shortened your days of care if you cut out the weekends or something. You have to let us know that information within 30 days. The center will provide to Midwest all necessary paperwork needed to qualify. We don't need to worry about that because obviously you guys have already qualified for us. That's just when you first start. In your packet each month, for the mid-month and end-of-month packet, we need to receive your menu production records and infant production records, your meal counts, we also call those X sheets, your time in and out records, all CACFP invoices and receipts, your CACFP staff labor sheets if we have requested those of you. If you're sending in plenty of receipts that you're hitting your reimbursement, we don't usually ask you to do labor sheets. So some of you guys might not even know what those are. But if you're a center that maybe struggles hitting that nonprofit, you'll send us in those labor sheets. Any new NS 100C forms, that's just your IEF. Your Title 20 billing statements, so your EOP, our centers that are nonprofit do not have to send those in to us. And then your vendor delivery slips if you use a caterer. With those IEFs, I would prefer those not to be in the packet. I would rather you email those separately just because then we almost have like a receipt. Because it's real easy to say like, oh, I thought I put that in the packet. And we get your packet, we're looking through your packet, like, I don't see the IEF, I'm not sure what happened here. But if you can say, hey, Lacey, I emailed you that IEF on the 7th, then I can pop open my email and say, sure enough, you did. Let me make sure that gets taken care of. So it almost protects you guys as well, because then you have a receipt that like, I sent it to you on this day. What's the deal? So please, we prefer that you send them either email or fax. Either one works. The center must submit all required CACFP records to support the claim to Midwest by the 3rd of each month. We say the 3rd, but honestly, depending on how the month falls, that's not always feasible. If the 3rd is like a Sunday, So that meant the Friday was the first. You really haven't had a lot of time to put your packet together to get it to us by then. So just as soon as you can get that to us, that's the important thing. Claims submitted after 60 calendar days of the last day of the month are not reimbursable. So let's say you have a late claim. Let's say you didn't get your May claim to us yet because something happened, somebody's out on maternity leave, something's going on at your center, you haven't gotten us that claim yet. If that goes into the next month after that, we're really running out of time to get that claim processed so that you can even get reimbursement. That's also something to think about when you're making changes. So let's say you have an IEF that you're sending to us that you maybe been holding on to for a while. You didn't realize you hadn't sent it. So you've got an IEF back from, let's say February, like, oh shoot, I forgot to send this to Midwest. I better send this into them. We can't go back that far. We can't make changes. Or you say like, oh, there was a problem on my error report from 3 months ago. Can you get that fixed for me? No, we literally can't, because the federal regulations don't let us go past that 60-day mark. The center must allow representatives from Midwest, NDE, USDA, or other state or federal officials to come into the center during the regular hours of operation for the purpose of reviewing CACFP operations. This is a big one. You have to, if you're going to receive federal funds, you have to let us come in and do reviews. We're only coming in during your regular business hours. But you can't say like, oh, well, the director stepped out. Can you like come back tomorrow? That doesn't work. Especially for you guys being out of towners, because we've drove out that way. We can't, we can't just buzz back in tomorrow because it was, a possibly 2-3 hour drive to get out to you guys. So that's why you really also need to let us know when you're going to be closed for that same reason. But yeah, definitely let us in. And the same thing with NDE, please cooperate with NDE when they come out and do audits. They get real crabby when centers are super cooperative with them. But if you were to not allow us in, that would possibly be grounds for a serious deficiency determination. The center must maintain all CACFP records for 3 years plus the current year. Most of your CACFP records we maintain for you because you're sending that packet to us each month. The records that we want to make sure that you retain is we want to make sure that you're retaining that IEF, a copy of your IEFs. Always keep a copy of that at your center. And then also with your infant solid food forms, obviously you're not sending those to us each time you're doing each time that there's a change or whatever, an update. Make sure to save those each year. Once that baby turns 1, do not trash that form. Drop it in their child file, drop it with the previous year's IEFs, but make sure you save that, because if there were to be an audit, they might be looking quite a ways back when they're doing their audit. They'll want that. And if we can't produce that, then that would mean that you would lose meals. The center must record menu production records and amounts at the time the meal is being served or being prepared. All meal counts must be recorded at point of service when a participant child has been served all required components for the meal or snack. Meal counts may not be recorded prior to the meal service or after the meal service. Keep that in mind. That's not something where you're like, oh, I've already prepared lunch. I'm not even going to mess with that. I'm going to wait till the kids go to sleep and then I'll do all that paperwork because I'm just frazzled. I can't even do that right now. No, if you don't have a quantity on that menu production record before the food leaves the kitchen, technically that meal should be disallowed. That's when that record needs to be documented, and those kids need to be marked while they're seated there eating. It's not in this line, but it's in the next line as well. Also, these records cannot be altered or amended. So let's say you've got your menu production records on the counter or your X sheets, you've got your meal counts, you're sitting there with the kids, you're eating with the kids, you're marking off their names, who's eating, and you have that seated there, and someone knocks over milk and spills on your X sheet. What do you do with that? Do you throw it away and make a new one? No. What you would do is lay it out, let it dry out, send that to us because it has to be that original record. Now, if it's particularly like, let's say you've got some real bodily fluids on there, maybe someone was sick or something like that, something gets on those, go ahead, snap a picture of it, send it to your rep because they'll want to know why these records had been recreated. And so if we have that paper trail that's like, oh, something happened to these, I sent you a picture, we know we have that paper trail, but don't just be like, oh, this one kind of got messy. One of the kids scribbled on it. I'm just going to pitch it and reprint these. Don't. We don't care if they're messy. We don't care if they're kind of gross. We don't care if food spilled on it. We don't care if there's boogers smeared on it. It is what it is. You guys work in daycare. It is what it is. We're used to it. We've all worked in daycare before where we understand that your paperwork might get messy sometimes. We need those original records. Attendance, time in and out records must be recorded at the time of arrival and time of departure for each child. Attendance records are not to be altered or amended. With those attendance records, make sure that those are accurate attendance records for each child. Sometimes we'll get sign-in outs in the mail in our packets that say, okay, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, or worse, 8 to 5 and a line across it. That is not an accurate representation of when those kids are coming and going each day. No one's getting dropped off at the same time and leaving at the same time every day. That's not realistic. I understand some of you guys do van runs. And if they're kids you're picking up on the van so that you are picking them up and dropping them off at the same time, just write van next to it and just make sure you're getting that parent signature at the end of the week on those. The center must serve meals that meet the CACFP requirements for the ages of children being served. Meals must meet the meal pattern requirement of 7 CFR 226.20. You've got to follow the meal pattern. So that green and white menu thing, does everyone have that meal pattern posted in their kitchen that shows what you need to be serving at breakfast, lunch, and PM snack with the quantities? If you, for some reason, do not have one of those, it should have been in your original binder. You got them brought out when you first started. If you've lost those or you need a new copy, please let your field monitor know and we'll get that sent out to you so we can get that back out there so you have everything you need to know what to serve at each meal. The center will not be reimbursed for more than 3 meals per child per day. And they worded that funny. And of the 3 meals, one must be a snack or for failing to meet CACFP meal pattern requirements. What that means is you cannot serve more than 2 meals and a snack a day. That's your absolute maximum. So even if you offer even if you have breakfast, AM, lunch, PM, dinner, evening, you're serving every possible meal. The most you're going to get reimbursed for is 2 meals and a snack. And the computer takes care of that for us where it'll pull your most expensive. So if it's a center that serves dinner, it'll pay out your lunch, PM, and dinner usually, because lunch and dinner pay out the same rate that's higher than breakfast. And yeah, just make sure you're meeting meal pattern. If you don't meet meal pattern, keep in mind you don't get paid for that entire meal. So if you forgot one quantity, it's not like, oh, well, we just take off $20 for that or something. No, it takes off that entire meal. So you want to make sure all those quantities are in there and that you followed all the rules so you get that full amount. The center will not receive reimbursement for children over the age that are 13 or older. The one caveat to that is special needs children, because nobody here has migrant children. That would go up to 15. If you have a child that has special needs that has an IEP on file, you can send that in to us and they can, you can receive reimbursement for them. I think our rule is up to 21, as long as your center, the majority of the persons served are 18 and under. The center will not receive reimbursement for meals excess of their authorized capacity. The computer does that for us. Whatever we have in the computer for you for capacity, anything over that, it cuts off. That's why it's so very important to let us know if your capacity changes, because you might be missing out on meals. Or on the other side of that, it could be bad where your your capacity has dropped. We don't know. We're paying out all these meals. We find out 6 months later, and now we have to go back and take, because we can give, we can only give up to 60 days back. We can there's not a time limit for how far back we can take from. So if we find that your capacity is dropped for for 6 months, we'll have to go back and pluck those meals that were over capacity. So please let us know all that information. If you are having capacity issues, it might be a shift care issue. So like during the school year, you have your preschoolers, your 2 through 5-year-olds during the day. And then some of them are getting picked up about 3 o'clock, and then your school agers come. So at PM Snack, you've got those preschool kids and those school agers in there. So it might look like you're over capacity, but never are you over your actual license capacity at one time. If that happens, we can look at your sign and announce, verify that, and add a second shift to your PM Snack so that you don't lose any meals because of that. The center agrees that 1 meal per child will be claimed at each meal. You can't try to charge more than 1 meal per child. The center agrees to no separate charge for food. You can't give anyone a separate bill for how much their food costs. You can't assign a costs to like, oh, you know, a lunch costs this much, a dinner costs this much, and expect that on a separate bill. That all just needs to be within your tuition costs. The center agrees to only claim meals consumed on site for reimbursement. So that means if you're having a field trip day, try to work in your meals either around the field trip or just don't claim that meal that day. That's your option. We don't allow field trip meals because 1, we would be required to monitor that because it's off site. And the example I like to give is we're not going to pay to get into the zoo and try to find you there while you're having your field trip. We're not going to do that. We wouldn't be able to find you. We're not, you know, there'd be no way for us to do that. Plus, especially lunch, no one's bringing a cooler with a gallon of milk in it. No one's bringing milk on a field trip. It's not realistic at all. So that's why we don't allow that sort of thing. And that's, you know, that's a Midwest policy right there. The center agrees that all vendors will be paid within 30 days. So if you use a caterer, make sure to be paying your catering bill. If you do not, and your caterer reaches out to us, that could declare you seriously deficient if you're not staying up on that bill. The center agrees that a 15% administrative fee will be paid to Midwest. That comes right off of your reimbursement. When the girls have been coming out, they should be bringing out your office error report that actually shows that fee on there now. If you're not getting your office report when they're coming out, that error report that shows that amount, please let me know and we'll get that fixed to make sure you're getting that, so that we're being super transparent on what the fees are. It's just 15% off of your reimbursement. Like I said, it comes off the top. It's not a separate bill or anything that you're getting. It's just worked right into there. The center agrees to attend the Midwest mandatory CACFP annual training workshop. The center is responsible to maintain documentation. Like I said, we're going to send you the certificates if the CACFP annual training is not completed. So those of you, when I look at our, oops, went too far. Those of you that are not on our participant list that we're supposed to be, you will not have your NDE application renewed until this is completed. So that's why it's super important to do our mandatory training each year. There might be other trainings you might be required to do. That's usually in reference to kind of naughty situations. Where if there's a corrective action or definitely an SD situation, if you're declared SD, there's an additional training that people have to sit through for that. If the center is not able to demonstrate compliance with Midwest's regulations within 3 months, that doesn't apply to you guys because you are all well past that 3-month mark. The center will turn in monthly receipts and labor sheets to demonstrate they're maintaining nonprofit CACFP food operations. So what that means is you might hear us say like, oh, you're not sitting nonprofit. And you're like, well, I'm a for-profit center. I'm not going to be nonprofit. This is a little different than that. What we're referring to is the amount that you get back in reimbursement. Your food program check, you should be spending at least that much in food and expenses. Now that some of you might really struggle to hit that dollar amount in food. Let's say you have your, 100% free or something like that. You're really going to struggle with that. That's where we might have you do labor sheets. Also keep in mind your reimbursable items, or not reimbursable, your items that can count towards the food program. That's really anything that you need to serve meals. That includes you replace your lunch tables. Send us in those receipts. You get a new stove, a new refrigerator, a new microwave. You're buying new plates, bottles, bibs, any of that, new bottle warmer. You got a new crock pot for your baby room so you can keep your bottles warm. Anything like that, send that in to us. But yeah, we'll let you know. I need to work on that right now to see where everyone is sitting. Receipt wise, we've been working on annual training. We've been working on our application. We've been working on a lot of things, but as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to find out where everyone's sitting at because we usually check that quarterly. The center will be required to send Midwest a yearly income and expense report. And it says 2 bank statements. We have never required 2 bank statements. I don't even know why that's in there. We have you do that income and expense every January. Joni sends that out to you. She also sends you out the small procurement and your staff salary and the oversight charts. Those all go towards your financial viability. All centers need to be financially viable to show us that you can run your business. You have all the things you need to run your business without having to use food program funds to pay your light bill. We know that you've got all the staff you need. The staff salary sheet shows you've got like 4 people. You've got all your workers. You've looked at the prices of things through the small procurement. That oversight chart shows us you've decided who's going to do each task. You have a great plan. You should be successful on the CACFP. The center will notify Midwest if their CACFP designated staff member changes, including the director. Please, please, please let us know when your director changes. That's so embarrassing when we call and we're like, hey, can we talk to Janine? And they act all like skittish on the phone. And you're like trying to get like, come on, help me out here. I need to talk to somebody. And you say, well, this is Lacey with your food program. Who can help me here? And they're like, oh, Janine doesn't work here anymore. We've replaced her with somebody else. Like, well, does she know anything about the food program? Is this why your baby menus looked really rough this month? Let us know these things. ahead of time so that we can do what we need to do as far as training or anything else like that so that you don't have a bad month of disallows. And we obviously have to update things. Any new director has to have an NDL run on them, the National Disqualified List, to make sure that they can even participate on the food program. So that's why we ask a lot of times what your director's birthday is. We need that when we're running the NDL. And we would need a new staff salary sheet because technically we're not supposed to accept labor sheets if that person is not listed on that staff salary sheet. The center will obtain NS 100, the IEF forms annually and submit those to Midwest for determination. Please, please, please wait for Joni to send that email that's like, hey, it's time for your center to renew again. I know you might see that on your dashboard that says like, oh, I've got, 79 kids soon to expire or expired. Wait till Joni sends you that email to let you know, okay, it's good to do these right now. And the center will give Midwest prior notification when open for a major holiday. Now, this is not like a major holiday, but there is a federal holiday tomorrow. Juneteenth is tomorrow. Please let us know if you're going to be closed for that day. Anytime you're going to be closed in general, please let us know if it's a normal day. We understand weather-wise, we don't need to know every one of those because, we can see weather's kind of, weather's garbage out in Hastings. We're not driving all the way to Hastings, especially if the weather's bad. But if you guys are closed for any other reason, please let us know. We've had some pretty far drives that we've had to go on, and we arrive at a center and they're not open. And that's no fun, especially when we've driven hours to get across the state. Because generally speaking, there's a few of them that are kind of clustered together, but a lot of times we're driving out just to go to one or two centers. And it's a bit of a drive here from Omaha to some of you guys. So please, please, please let us know. Then there's the non-discrimination statement. There's a little new part. They've just changed that where it says sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation. We're supposed to be getting a new poster. I don't know when that's going to happen. At some point, they said that last year. We still haven't gotten one, but they did update that non-discrimination statement. And then at the end, they did ask us to put in kind of like a glossary at the end of our contract, just because throughout our contract, we had things labeled by a bunch of different names. Like if I say meal counts, you might know those as X sheets. You might know those as point of service or POS records. We are calling things a bunch of different names, and we just kind of need to streamline that. So we're really only calling it one thing. And so that's our definition of terms at the end. So if we say that we need a particular document, we know exactly what you guys know exactly what we're referring to. So that's the contract. Like I said, please sign that and send that back to your field monitor as soon as possible so we can get that all moving. And then we have our income eligibility forms. You should have got that new IEF in the packet. This year, it's the grape in the corner. Do not start using this until July 1st. Please, please wait until that time, because any forms, like if you have somebody starting in June and you've already had parents fill this out and send it back to us, we're going to have to send it back to you and have you redo it because it's not active yet. This is only for new children enrolling in your center until your renewal month. So don't go and make copies of this and just distribute to all your parents and get them going again. No. This is just for new children starting after July 1st. Once you get that renewal notice from Joni, that's when you'll have them fill out the new GRAPE form. The parent is to complete all fields on this form. Make sure you're entering the children into CX or Kid Care before sending the form into us. It's kind of frustrating sometimes because we'll get a form and we're looking like, okay, I've got to activate this form. I'm going to pop open pending. Nope, it's not in pending. I'll pop open withdrawn. No, they're not withdrawn. Well, maybe somebody already did this form. I'm going to pop up inactive. I can't find this child in here anywhere. So then that goes in the not in CX pile and that doesn't get checked till the end of the month. Meanwhile, 2 or 3 weeks later, you've entered the child and then you guys are getting frustrated. Like, why haven't they messed with this form yet? I sent this form 2 or 3 weeks ago. Well, we can't until you've entered the child in there. So just make sure to get that in there. On July 1st, any of your My Plate forms, any of your plates that have that My Plate at the top, any of your blank forms, go ahead and trash those after July 1st. Because if you send in a My Plate form, it can't count after July 1st. And it says IEFs are due by the 3rd of each month. Again, we understand the 3rd isn't always possible, but try to get them to us as soon as possible because those take a while for us to do along with your packet. If we're receiving your packet late, we might not have time to get all the, get everything done to get in by our submission date. Okay, so these are the only centers that are renewing in July. If your name is on this list, you will redo all your forms in July. Nobody else will. Just these guys. If your center is not listed above, use the new form for new children only. Joni really, really, really wanted me to stress this. Enrollment forms. Okay, so on the actual enrollment form, the top part is the enrollment section. This is where the parent will list all enrolled children, date of birth, enroll date, times and days of care, meals served. I know it says usual days of care and times of care, but please don't do the usual ones. Please do worst case scenario. So let's say you've got a school ager that is enrolling during the school year. And mom's like, oh, he's just a school ager. He'll just be here after school. She writes 3 to 5 p.m. Non-school day or summer hits. That child's getting dropped off at 8 o'clock in the morning with his sister. You can't get reimbursement for breakfast or lunch because all mom has approved for him is PM snack at your center. So when you get a form back from a parent, when they start, point that out to them. Say, hey, is he going to be here on your non-school days or during the summer? And if she says yes, be like, all right, can you please fix this so that I can get reimbursement for the meals? Now to the right here where we've got infant, school age, Head Start, foster child. Does every child need one of those boxes checked? No. That is only to tell you that more information may be needed. If it's an infant, that tells you that they might need an infant solid food form. If it's a foster child, that shows you stuff needs put down at the bottom. If it's Head Start, we've in the 6-7 years that I've worked here, we've never had anyone turn in the documentation for a Head Start. It's some sort of Head Start award letter. We've never seen one, but there is some sort of documentation that they can send in. I'll be honest, I don't even know. I assume it gives them free meals, maybe reduced. I don't know. And that's just because, like I said, we have never had that come up in the time that I've worked here. But if we were to get one, we will definitely figure it out. Okay, so part 2. That's where they're going to document if they're SNAP, TANF, FDPIR. I don't think, I've never seen an FDPIR come up around here. That's just for Indian reservations. Maybe up in like the South Sioux area, Dakota City, you might run into that there. Maybe clear out west, but I don't even think we go that far west and north that you might run into that. So the main one you're going to see there is the SNAP or the TANF. If a family receives SNAP or TANF benefits, your parents must write in their master case number. That is not their social security number. It should be a 5 to 8 digit number. Now, some of you, again, like the South Sioux areas up there, our Bellevue areas down here, they might have some people from Iowa. Their master case number is a lot longer. I think it's like 9 digits. I think there's even letters in it, but your Nebraska SNAP number should only be 5 to 8 digits long. And just as a reminder, this does not mean they're Title 20. Title 20 is not the same thing as SNAP. Title 20 is not a qualifying program. SNAP and TANF are, but not Title 20. So just because you have an authorization on file for a child does not mean that, oh yeah, they definitely get free meals. They've got an authorization. That's not what that means. They have to indicate that they get EBT or TANF. Oh yeah, what happens if a parent indicates SNAP or TANF but doesn't know their number? You can tell them the master case number. It is located on their Title 20 authorization, but again, that's not the qualifying program the SNAP or TANF would be. Okay, so let's say family either doesn't qualify with a qualifying program or above income guidelines, or just choose to not provide their information. That's their prerogative. They don't need to share it with, if they don't want to tell you how much they make, that's their business, not yours. They can just check the box for 3A. If they check this box for 3A, what other information is needed on this IEF? Nothing, just the signature, date, and the family contact information. If they've checked that box, I don't care what their social security number is. That doesn't apply. I don't care who lives in their household. They're choosing not to give that information, and that's their prerogative. 3B is where they would put in their income information if that's how they're choosing to try to qualify. All members in the household need listed in this. Make sure amounts are computable. What I mean by that is sometimes we'll see IEFs come in that say, oh, mom makes $12 an hour. Cool. I put that into a yearly chart. I don't know what $12 a year. I can't figure out what $12 an hour equates to yearly, because I don't know how many hours a week mom's working. Is mom working 20 hours a week? Is mom working 40 hours a week? I would need to know that information so that I have an actual dollar amount for how much mom makes at the end of the year. Again, we need that last four of the social security number. If they do not have a social security number, they can just check that box right there that says, I do not have a social security number. And then make sure to list the foster children in this section. It says it right there. List the names of all household members not listed in part 1, that enrollment. So any child that's not enrolled in the center, anybody that's living in that house goes in this section, part 3B, and foster children. Okay, so what if their income varies? We hear that a lot. Like, I don't know what my income is. One week I'm making $1,000. The next week I'm only making $200. How am I supposed to fill out this form? Average is fine. This is, do the best you can. On average, how much do you make a paycheck? Or how much do you make in a month? How much do you make overall in a year? Any of that is fine. Do the best you can. We're not calling employers. We're not requesting check stubs, anything crazy like that. Do your best when you're filling it out. For foster children, this is a question we get a lot. For foster children, is their income the amount that the foster parent gets for the child? No, it is just their personal use income the child gets from a job, or maybe a deceased parent's pension or social security. But this would also then count towards the family income. Another question we get a lot with IEFs is, all right, the mom and dad are going through a divorce. How do they fill this out? Again, it's only the people living in that household. So if, mom's filling it out, dad has already vacated the home, she is just going to list herself with the children, because those are the only people actually living in the household, regardless of their marital status. And then all forms must be signed and have a date. Make sure there's always that date in there. Also with that, keep in mind that Midwest can only determine forms that are less than 60 days old from the signature date. So again, you're going through child files and you're like, oh shoot, I've got this form back from January. I forgot to send to Midwest. I've been missing out on reimbursement for, 6 months. I better get this into them. We literally can't do anything with that form. because that signature date is more than 60 days old. And we understand completely how hard it is for you guys to get parents to fill out forms. And we feel like real jerks when we have to ask you to, like, hey, can you have mom and dad refill this out? But there's literally nothing we can do in those moments. So just really be mindful of that when you're getting those forms back, send them into us right away, and so that you can get reimbursed. All right. Now this one's, I like this question. A parent signed the form in July. The parent signed the form. She filled out her IF. She filled it out July 1st. She wrote in the signature date of July 1st. Can you get credit for meals served in June with that July 1st signature date? Do we know? Oopsie. I jumped around. No, the form cannot be activated in any month prior to the signature date. So just be mindful of that. If you are having a child start towards the end of the month, you want to make sure you get that IEF filled out right away, because even if it has a July 1st signature date, we can't go back to June for that. Catering vendor contracts. Using a caterer can be a great option for centers that struggle with finding a good cook or struggle with menu planning. If you're using a caterer, you've already got an email from me requesting your catering contract. I think I have like almost all of them back. There's just a couple I'm waiting on. If the contract for the year is under 50,000, both the center and the vendor can sign it and send it in to me. If it's over 50,000, I've got to sign it first and approve it and then send it back to you. Catering is a really good option if you are struggling to find a cook, struggling to keep a cook. If you if you have the reimbursement to cover it, for sure, it's a weight off your shoulders, because they're taking care of that vendor delivery ticket for you. You don't have to think about menu production. You don't have to go grocery shopping. You don't have to think about what to serve. If your cook calls in at 5 o'clock in the morning and you know that you're going to now have to go into work and make breakfast, that's not going to happen if you have a caterer, because the caterer already dropped off breakfast the day before with your PM snack. So there's definitely a lot of conveniences to using a caterer. Your civil rights. Make sure this poster is in a prominent location. It's not weird for me to go to a center, or the girls to go to a center and find your civil rights poster in a break room, in a bathroom, you know, in a, like, the director's office. We don't want it there. We want it in a prominent location, because what that poster has on it is your information on how, like, if a parent feels like they've been discriminated against, that gives information to that parent on how they can file that claim. So that's why it's important that that is in a prominent location. All CACFP materials issued must include the non-discrimination statement. That's right there on that IEF. That's on that back page there. And then training for civil rights is required yearly. There's multiple training options listed on NDE's website. That's not anything that we make you guys send into us. That's just something to keep on record, on file. So far, the state hasn't gotten too upset about those not being completed, but we'll see as time goes on if they get more sticklers on that. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based upon race, color, religion, sex, national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. The 6 protected classes for the child nutrition programs are race, color, national origin, age, disability, and sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation. Serious deficiency. All right, so since the food program is federally funded, you know, your reimbursement doesn't come out of Midwest pocket. We're not writing personal checks for your reimbursement. That's all federal funding. There are certain regulations that go along with federal funding. Those have to be followed. If you're not following the regulations, that could result in corrective action. You end up, with me knocking at your door. Uh, and we'll do a corrective action letter. We'll work on a corrective action plan. Um, we'll try to work that out the best that we can. If there's still problems following regulations after that corrective action plan, that can declare you seriously deficient. Reasons that you might be declared seriously deficient is false claims in your submission, simultaneously participating with more than one sponsor. That's not really possible because we're the only sponsor in Nebraska. Non-compliance with program meal pattern, failure to keep required records, conduct or conditions that threaten the health or safety of children in your care. So public safety, that is actually a big one. So if you run into licensing problems, if licensing shuts you down for something, even if it gets resolved somewhat quickly, once they've shut you down for a health and safety concern, that automatically sends you SD on the food program. That's a federal regulation. I have no control over that. And then even if you get your license back, we're having a few homes dealing with this right now. Even if they got their license back, everything's good on their end, you still can't participate in the food program for 7 years until that disqualification is up. So just be mindful of that. Failure to participate in training can get you declared seriously deficient. And then any other circumstances that might violate the agreement, that sort of thing. And like I said, if you get declared seriously deficient, you would do a corrective action plan. We could accept that if it met the needs, but then if you were to have that same issue happen again, then that would remove you from the food program for, like I said, 7 years. And there's an appeals process for that, but just be mindful of that. Other reminders. Date stamps on paperwork. Have you guys noticed that when you guys print your paperwork, it puts a date stamp of when you print it on the bottom? So if we go out on June, if we went out on June 20th to look at your menus, and we grab your June 1st menu that you filled out, and we look at that timestamp, and it says you printed it on June 10th, we're going to go, oh, how'd this happen? Did you write it on a different piece of paper and copy it over to this one? Because it looks like you didn't print this till June 10th. So where'd you write that down when you served that meal on June 1st? So just be mindful of that. It does show us where you print those. Again, if something happened to the paperwork, let us know, but let us know ahead of time. Don't let us know when we get there for a review. Be like, oh yeah, we had something happen. Let us know when that thing happened. And please, please, please don't white out all the dates before you send in your packet. We already had one center do that. All the little timestamps on the bottom were whited out when we got their mid-month. Don't do that one either. At the reviews, we're going to ask what their children are expected. Because you really can only get credit for children that we viewed during your meal. Now, there's going to be some times where it might be a lunch. You might just be waiting on 2 AM preschoolers to show up after AM preschool, like during the school year. Just let us know who those are, and we'll mark them down that you're still expecting them, so that you can get credit for them. But if we go out on a review and like, all right, it looks like you've got these 20 kids, and you're like, yep. We say, okay, are you expecting any more kids? And you say, nope, that's it. This is all we got today. And then your packet comes at the end of the month and you've claimed 40 kids. Those kids are getting disallowed because you didn't let us know they were coming. We didn't see them. So we can't confirm that they actually ate that meal. Labor sheets, again, they need wage information. We need to know, again, just like those IEFs, if you can put, yeah, I worked, 40 hours on the food program this week, but if I don't know how much you made per hour, I can't put a dollar amount to count towards a receipt. Again, dates closed. We've already talked about that. Make sure you let us know that. And if you're direct entry, you must have a backup method. not very many of you, but there are a few of you that will enter your meal counts and quantities directly into the computer while you're serving the food, while you're preparing the food. If you do that, you have to have a backup method, and you also have to have that direct entry addendum completed and on file with us, so that we know that you understand what your expectations are in that role. Because, you know, theoretically, if we log in, if we say like, oh, she's direct entry, she had her lunch from 12 to 1, I'm gonna go ahead and pop her stuff open, because as soon as you hit save, we can see it. I'm gonna go ahead and pop her stuff open. Let's see if she did her record keeping today, and be like, oh, it looks like she's missing like the last 3 days of record keeping. Technically, those would be disallowed meals, because we can see that that was not done when it was supposed to be done, because you're direct entry, so you're not sending us in a paper record. Everything is on the computer. So just make sure you guys understand exactly what your expectations are with that direct entry. Does anyone have any questions over record keeping? I'll let Carrie pipe up with any questions that she sees in the chat. I don't know how to even get to the chat. I'm here. I know. I don't see anything really in here. So we clock children out. No, yeah. Carrie already answered that. Great. That's perfectly fine for you guys to clock children in and out. We would just like to see that parent signature at the end. We just, don't want to see 8 to 5 every day. Did anyone have any other questions about, what is direct entry? Direct entry is when you do not keep paper records on your X sheets and menu production. That would require you to have a laptop directly in the kitchen. So while you're preparing the meal, you just pop it open and you put in, I served my 2 pounds of hamburger, my 2 pounds of spaghetti noodles, my number 10 can of green beans. You pop that information right in the computer while you're cooking. And the same thing with your meal counts. You can use KidCare on a phone or something, or a tablet. You can do it on a laptop. You can do it on the desktop. You can do it on whatever you want. You can mark the kids that are eating. The problem with that is, what do you do when your internet's down? What's your plan there? What are you doing? You have to make sure that whoever is doing that is really on top of it, because it's easy for direct entry to be out of sight, out of mind. Because it's not the same as a piece of paper. You know, I've got my little clipboard with my X sheets sitting right there on my kitchen counter. That's a reminder for me to do them. If it's direct entry, you have to have some other reminder to remind yourself to open up my phone, tablet, laptop, and put that information in. Because if you don't put it in on time, you don't get credit for those meals. And yes, direct entry must be approved by Midwest before switching to this method. We need to ensure that your center and staff and cook are entering this at the correct times, and they understand what their expectations are. We don't have a ton of centers that do direct entry. Because like I said, it's a tough one to stay on top of. But centers that might have trouble printing, centers that might have some other issues, it might be a good route for them. All right. All right, meal pattern. We all know breakfast consists of milk, fruit or a vegetable, and a grain up to 3 times a week. You can do a meat alternate. Juice is fine to be served as your fruit. Like with cereal, you can serve juice 1 time a day. That's it. Lunch and dinner, you can serve 2 veggies in lieu of a fruit. and a veggie, but not 2 fruits. Juice is not creditable at lunch, and the reason juice is not creditable at lunch is you can't have 2 cups. It's already, you know, when you already have a table of 3-year-olds or even 2-year-olds, your cups are already probably going to get knocked over. If each child has 2 cups, those are all getting spilled. People are going to get confused, and, you know, that's just a rule. You can't have 2 cups. But you'll do all 5 components at lunch and dinner. Snack can be any 2 components, they just can't be 2 of the same component. So how can we tell if something is a creditable grain? Because not all grains are creditable. They have to be at least enriched. And where would we find that information? We would find that information on the ingredients list, or if there's a CN label or product formulation statement. That's where it's going to tell us if this is a creditable grain or not. Like I said, all grains need to be at minimum enriched. That means that even though during processing the bran and germ have been removed, they have added, during processing, they've added back in things like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid, and iron. Or they could be, you know, you might also see that as fortified. That's usually how you'll see it on cereals. You'll see them listed as fortified. Okay, so here's our Village Hearth cottage bread. We have our ingredients list here. Is this product enriched? It is, because we can see that the very first word is enriched. And we see the niacin, reduced iron, thiamine, riboflavin, folic acid. We see all that in there. So we know that this is a creditable bread. That's perfectly fine to serve. Our Famous Dave's original recipe cornbread. We've got sugar, yellow cornmeal, bleached wheat flour, bunch of stuff in it, but I don't see anything. I don't see the word enriched. I don't see any thiamine, iron, riboflavin, anything like that. So this is not enriched. So you would not be able to serve Famous Dave's original recipe cornbread. We've got our Betty Crocker wild blueberry muffin and quick bread mix. Our first ingredient is enriched. So we know that this is a creditable muffin mix. And Carrie wanted me to make sure to point out that cake mix and muffin mix are not the same thing. Make sure if you are making muffins that you are using an actual muffin mix. Cake mix has a higher sugar content in it. So just make sure you're using that actual muffin mix. All right, our Tostitos bite-sized tortilla chips. They have corn, vegetable oil, and salt. Do we see the word enriched in there anywhere? Do we see riboflavin, niacin, anything like that? We do not. So those would not be an enriched grain. Therefore, those would not be creditable. There are other tortilla chips that are. You can find enriched tortilla chips. You can find whole grain tortilla chips. But the Tostitos bite size would not be. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't serve them. That just wouldn't be the creditable portion. Like I know with the school district, on my son's Super Nacho Day, they serve like a cinnamon breadstick with it. I guess they used to. I guess now it's more of like a churro type thing with their super nachos. But yeah, pretty much a cinnamon breadstick with it so that they meet that enriched grain component. So that's one workaround for it. And yes, Sun Chips are a great one that are whole grain. But if you were, like I said, making like a nachos or something, I know there's a Tostito strips that works. Kim brought those into our office one day. That's a creditable tortilla chip. If you are ever curious if if a product is creditable or if it's a whole grain, anything like that, please, please, please send us the label. Specifically send me the label, because I love looking at labels. I love looking at that sort of thing. feel free. That's never anything that's going to get you in trouble. There's never a time that you're going to send us a product and you're going to get in any trouble for it. No, just let us know like, hey, we're serving this now. Is this okay? And I'll be like, oh, maybe not so much. That won't let you count that as a creditable item. Or I'll be like, oh yes, no, this is fantastic. How do we know if it's good? We're the very next slide is on whole grains. What if we cater and they're supposed to send Sun Chips, but they send nacho cheese Doritos as a substitute? What should we do as a center? Oh, that's a fun one. That is one of my favorite things with caterers. So your send me the label for the nacho cheese Doritos. Nacho cheese Doritos could be creditable. It might not count as your whole grain, but look at the ingredients list on your nacho cheese Doritos. If it's enriched, have at it. It wouldn't be able to count as your whole grain though. So you'd have to make sure there was a different whole grain. If you're a caterer, we didn't talk about this earlier with the catering contracts. Part of your catering contract specifically says, which I have a whole stack of them on my desk. They reference the fact that they are required to meet meal pattern. If you have a meal disallowed, if I take a meal or your rep takes a meal, because you, let's say they send lunch, they only sent a fruit. They didn't send a vegetable with your lunch. And you're like, well, what do I'm kind of at the mercy of what my caterer did here. It's still your responsibility to get that filled. But if we take that meal because you didn't meet meal pattern, because meal pattern was not met, you can then go back to your caterer and say, hey, I got this disallowed because you didn't hold up your contract. I'm not paying you for those meals that day. That's in your contract. Oh yeah. And some vendors and caterers have access to whole grain Doritos. That is true. The first ingredient for a whole grain, we would want that word to be whole. That's the easiest way to tell if something is a whole grain, if that first word is in fact whole. After that, the second and third ingredient, we want to see either says whole or enriched or a brand or a germ product. Non-creditable grains cannot be in that first three ingredients. So a good example of that is the Chex Mix. It's made with Chex Mix. The first ingredient is whole whatever. The next ingredient, I think, is, or at least within the first three, one of the words is degerminated cornmeal. That is a non-creditable grain. So that would automatically, it's still enriched, so you're good as far as you can serve it, but it's not considered a whole grain because that degerminated cornmeal. Menu production records. Make sure you're writing your actual quantity prepared in the actual quantity prepared slot. Document CN label information, sugars for cereals and yogurts in the special notes section. Make sure you're doing that on your menu production records. Bread batter coating. A lot of people get confused on this one. Bread batter coating is literally just if you have a meat alternate that has a breading on it. So your corn dogs, your fish sticks, your chicken nuggets, even like a mozzarella stick, that breading you would put in as bread batter coating. It's not entirely uncommon for us to receive a menu production record that says bread batter coating, 2 loaves. No, if you're serving sliced bread, please choose either white bread or wheat bread from that food picker. Again, the only items that need that sugar documented are your cereals and your yogurts. Make sure with your cereals, you're doing your oatmeal and your granolas as well. Those are the only ones. We'll see a lot of times that many production records, like literally every grain has the sugar information on it. We don't need that. We just need it for your cereals and your yogurts. And then obviously the documentation for your CN label products. One thing that got brought up in the last training, and I'll touch on this real fast here, is so sometimes you'll see a product that says label required. Let's say it's sausage. It says label required. You might not have CN label information to write on there because you might not have a CN label for the sausage, and that might be okay. So what you're going to want to do is, the only place that this really applies, your chicken nuggets, if you don't have your CN label information written down, automatic disallow. Same with your fish sticks, anything like that. But your lunch meat, your sausage, your hot dogs, look at that, look at your ingredients list. If you look at the ingredients list, and let's say it's lunch meat, and we've got turkey, water, vinegar, spices, less than 2%, all the other junk, that's okay. That's as much as you need. That ingredients list is perfectly fine. So then on your menu production record, you'll write something like 100% turkey or whatever it may be. Now, if you have a product that you look at that ingredients list and you see beef, water, modified starch, tapioca starch, other junk, less than 2% of everything else, that is one that you would need a product formulation statement for. And just as a reminder, if it's a great value product, you cannot get a product formulation statement for it. That is a business practice of theirs. They will not share that information. So be mindful when you're at the grocery store, look at those labels to see if it's something that you're going to need additional documentation for. But if everything above that 2% is all stuff you can pronounce, all stuff that you can easily identify, meat, water, spices, maybe vinegar, maybe something like, something along those lines, you're perfectly fine there. Menu production records. All quantities of milk need documented on the menu production records. It's not uncommon for us to see at like a menu coming over for breakfast that says like, 36 ounces of frosted mini wheats, 5 pounds of apples, and then we see 3 gallons of milk. Just 3. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pop open your attendance. Did you have any 1-year-olds? Oh, you had 1-year-olds. So how much of that was whole milk? How much of that was for your big kids? Is that just for your big kids? I don't know. That meal's going to get taken off because it looks like you are missing a quantity, because we need that separate amount for your 1-year-olds and your big kids. We need that information on there. And then more with milk. Okay, so when you guys send in your receipts, those all get line item entered into our system. So you send us a stack of 40 receipts. Somebody is sitting there, my son, because I take these home and he does this. He sits there and enters every line item enter into our computer system, because it takes me a long time and I'm not a fan of it. And he does a great job, so I let him. Also with that now, they're wanting us to do milk audits. So the girls, when they go through the receipts, they cross off non-creditable items and they highlight each time you serve milk. He adds those up when he's doing that line item entering, and he goes, okay, this receipt has 10 gallons of 1% on it, 2 gallons of whole, 1 gallon or a half gallon of substitute. He enters that in. Now, there's a little device in CX that lets us run the milk audit for you, where it tells us, based on your attendance, based on who you have marked as special diet, based on ages and all that, this is how much milk you should have served in this month. And it pulls that receipt data and say, this is how much milk was actually purchased. And 99.9% of you are not buying enough milk. So here's just a fun little exercise here. Let's say your center has 35 children. That's honestly a pretty small center. But let's say you've got 35 children, 5 are under 1. So those are babies. We're not even worrying about those. They're drinking formula. You've got 5 1-year-olds. You've got 15 kids between your 2 and 5-year-old rooms, and you've got 10 school agers. It's summertime, so they're there all day, every day. At breakfast, you should have served, if all those kids were present, you should have served 2.5 cups of whole and 21.25 cups of 1%. So that's maybe a gallon and a third, maybe. Same thing at lunch. You would serve another 2.5 cups of whole, another 21.25 cups of 1% or skim. At snack, another 2.5 cups of whole, 17.5 cups of that 1% or skim, so just over a gallon. So in one day, you should have served 7.5 cups of whole, so about a half gallon, and 60 cups of 1% or skim, so about 3 3/4 gallon a day. That seems reasonable to you? That sounds about right what you do. Okay, so in a month, in a 20 days, you should have bought at least 9 gallons of whole, and at bare minimum, 75 gallons of 1% / skim. We're not seeing that on the receipts. We're seeing maybe 20 gallons, maybe 25, 30. We're not seeing those kind of numbers on your receipts. And that's if you only have 35 kids. Think if you have 100 kids at your center. So let's just pretend to, times that by 3. That would be so much milk. Even if you just doubled it. We're like, oh, we have 60 kids at our center. Did you purchase 150 gallons of milk this last month? In 1 month? Probably not. So now that's where we have to think, okay, I understand you're not doing all your milk purchasing on the weekends. You're sending people to the grocery store during the week. You're sending people to the gas station for milk during the week. You're sending them to the dollar store for milk during the week. Are you saving those receipts and sending them into us? Make sure you're doing that so you're properly accounting for the amount that you're buying. But that's, like I said, that's the bare minimum. That's with no waste. That's with nobody asking for more milk. And that's just breakfast, lunch, and PM. Let's say you're also serving dinner. So then you would add another, gallon and a quarter a day. So that would take you up to 5 gallons. And then 5, so that would be 100 gallons of milk a month if you serve dinner. And that's a lot of milk. That is a lot of milk. Reminders, labels get redone yearly. Go ahead and start working on your labels right now. They change formulas over time. So re-request your product formulation statements, re-request your CN labels, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to mark whole grain in the computer. Some of you guys will see like that on your menu production or on your error report that says, oh, it says I didn't have a whole grain. I didn't serve a whole grain on the 14th. I'm pretty sure I did. Did you check the whole grain rich box in the computer? Because if you didn't, that got taken off for that. So make sure you're doing that. And also make sure your quantities are computable. I feel like I used that word like 3 or 4 times in this PowerPoint presentation. It must be my favorite word, but we want to make sure the quantities are computable. Like I served 2 packages of chicken nuggets. Cool. I don't know what that means. I don't know how much of that was meat, how much of that was grain. There is no way by you saying that I served 2 packages of anything that I can figure out if kids got served the proper amounts. The one time that it's okay is with items and eggs. I served 12 eggs. Okay, I can figure that out from our food buying guide, how much you served. But if it's anything, we want to see it besides eggs, we want to see it in cups, pounds, ounces, something like that. Something where I can say this times this equals this. Do we have any questions on menu stuff? Carrie's reminding everyone that milk is gonna be monitored closely. And yeah, we understand that some of you guys don't serve milk at snack. That was literally just an example. We do have centers that do serve milk at snack every day. We do have that one. But just keep in mind that we want to make sure that you're serving enough milk. But did we have any other questions about any menu stuff? Oh, so with a catering service, we need to get labels from them. So NDE would say yes. NDE would want you to have those on file. They usually send them. We request them when we need them. Some of them are really good. Treat America on the back of their menus, they'll put in like their, it's almost like a product formulation statement, like a breakdown for their combination dishes. Make sure with your combination dishes though, I don't want to just see like, oh, we served, however many pounds of lasagna. Again, I need to go back and make sure, did they serve enough meat? Did they serve enough noodles? That sort of thing to meet meal pattern. Oh no, we worried about that too, because we did see that come up at first with the milk audit, and we thought that it was applying that milk. It does not, because I went back and checked the math manually. It's not counting that in, even if it automatically pops up on there. Because I was hoping that it was just a CX error, but I went through and checked the math manually. And so just be mindful of how much, because even if it's just the breakfast and lunch amount, what I see, can't remember now how much it was, but it would have been, well, so if it was 3 3/4, so a gallon and a quarter, we'll just say gallon and a half. So for breakfast and lunch with 35 kids, I think it was like a gallon and a half, roughly. So that would be 3 gallons a day. 3 times 20 is 60. It's not, the milk quantity is not going down a ton. And that's just for your 1%. Are you buying 60 gallons in the month? That's still a lot of milk. And that's again with only 35 kids. And that's just for breakfast and lunch. But yeah, I understand that it still shows in that. Does anyone have any questions on anything else with meal pattern, anything that's creditable, anything about grains, anything about CN labels, anything, any of that kind of junk? All right, doesn't look like it. Okay. Infants, we're almost done. I'm getting tired of talking. I don't know why I agree to do this whole thing myself every year. Infant meal pattern. A bottle is required at every meal. This is really important. We are seeing a ton of baby errors across the board at our centers. A bottle is required at every single baby meal. Minimum quantities must be met, and once developmentally appropriate and approved by parents, you add in the extra components. So for a baby, I know it has like 4 to 6. Disregard that 6. There is no such thing as a maximum in the CACFP. There's never like, oh no, you served more than the maximum, we're going to disallow this meal. That's not a thing. Your minimum is 4 ounces for a child, for a baby birth to 5 months. And that's just a formula. If it's breast milk, mom makes what mom makes, and you take it as it is. Once they hit 6 to 11 months, then they go up to that minimum of 6 ounces. Once it is developmentally appropriate, that might be before that 6 months. That might not be till 10 months. Once it's developmentally appropriate and mom has and the parents are, they're grown-ups, have approved foods. Once they've approved those foods now are required. If you want to think about it that way. And we want to make sure that there's always, that you're following the meal pattern. So breakfast is either the iron fortified infant cereal, a meat alternate, and a fruit or a veggie. Same thing with lunch. That iron fortified cereal, meat alternate, fruit, and a veggie. At snack time, again, bottle is required at every snack. Birth to 5 months, it has to be at least a 4-ounce bottle of formula, or again, breast milk, whatever mom does. Once they hit 6 months, though, they really only need a 2-ounce bottle. That's the minimum. Once they hit 6 months old, because theoretically they're starting to eat food and it's compensating for that. And then the food at a snack is a grain. So either crackers, ready to eat cereals, bread, and then a fruit or a veggie. Again, that's once mom has approved or the parents have approved, whatever they want the baby to eat. The menu shows exactly what needs served. Your baby menu that you have in your baby room, it tells you exactly what your minimums are and what meal pattern is for that meal. All items need quantities listed. Even if it's crackers, put, 2 crackers, put however many ounces. You should all have that infant ounce equivalents handout that's got that handy little chart. I took that out a while ago. If you don't have that, please let us know. It's a fun, handy chart that'll tell you exactly how many ounce equivalents there are in infant items. Menus need to be consistent. Once a component is started, it needs to continue to be served. So let's say mom's approved fruits. So you give baby a banana, you give baby fruits on Monday at breakfast. Tuesday, you just did rice cereal again. Wednesday, you didn't do the rice cereal, you just did the bananas. Thursday, you did both of them. And you're making these little zigzag lines. You're not ending up with straight lines. We want to see the straight lines, not the zigzag lines. Because again, once it's been approved and you started serving it, you need to continue to serve it. Otherwise, you're missing required components. Your infant solid food form. This is where the parent is going to accept or decline the center formula. This is a living document that needs to be updated regularly. It is perfectly fine for you as the center to update this document. Mom's going to fill out that top section where she says, yes, I want to use the center's formula. Thank you for disclosing what the formulas you offer. I'm going to use it, or I'm going to decline it and bring my own, sign, date. And then as baby starts food, the natural progression of that is, mom's going to come in the morning and say, oh my gosh, he had green beans last night and absolutely loved them. He absolutely loved them. Be like, okay, all right, we can start serving green beans at the center now. Are you okay with those at breakfast, lunch, and snack? What's your plan for those? And be like, oh yeah, he can have those whenever. All right, I will check those off that he can now have those. That's the natural progression of how this should be used. Once foods are approved, they need to be served. Otherwise, your meal could get disallowed. And like I said, center staff can update this. And then you say, Lacey, like every day, the parent is giving me different instructions as far as what I should serve today, what I shouldn't serve today. Go ahead and put that on the form. Go ahead and write that on that baby menu. Say like, oh, tummy troubles. I would be perfectly fine with that on a baby menu. You've got the previous day we had fruit and infant cereal. The next day we've got bottle and you write tummy troubles. I'm not going to expect you to be like, I don't care how much diarrhea that baby has. You better serve them all that fruit. No, absolutely not. Just as long as we have documentation on why meal patterns not being met at mom's request. Mom requested no fruit today. Mom requested to go back to bottles. Baby has really bad diaper rash. That is perfectly acceptable. The one caveat to that is if mom said only water to drink this week, that doesn't fly. Because you would need to have at least formula. Or mom said to start whole milk at this certain time. That doesn't work because that would need a doctor's note. But as far as the baby foods and stuff are concerned, there can be that variation. There is a second page to that infant solid food form. Please print that on the back, or like I said, just write in there. I'm totally cool with that. Um, like I said, we are almost done. We're doing pretty good on time. Infant, true or false? We'll go through these pretty fast. Babies can only have pureed foods. True or false? False. There are no rules about the consistency of food served to infants. They just need to be developmentally appropriate. Babies can start whole milk before their first birthday without a doctor's note. No, you cannot. The transition period for whole milk is 12 to 13 months. If a parent wants to start sooner because they're taking them off the bottle, there needs to be a doctor's note. You might have a parent that comes and like, oh, 9 months old, we're taking them off the bottle. I'm going to need a doctor's note, or else my food program person is going to get very upset with me. Baby-led weaning means I feed the baby exactly what the big kids eat. This is a tricky one. False. You are not going to feed them exactly what the big kids eat because you need to still follow meal pattern. So your 11-month-old that, your big kids are getting pancakes for breakfast, your 11-month-old that's doing infant-led weaning, you better figure out something else for that breakfast because that pancake won't work at breakfast because an 11-month-old cannot have a grain at breakfast. They need a meat alternate. So you can do yogurt, you can do eggs, you can do something like that. But that will not be a creditable meal. You can serve the pancake as an extra. That is perfectly fine, but you need a meat meal pattern first. Also, keep in mind, make sure foods are in the proper shape and texture to prevent choking. So they should be finger shaped. That's about the size that you want them to be. Babies can have yogurt at snack time. Can babies under 1 have yogurt at snack time? No, because meal pattern is just the grain at snack time. It only allows for a bottle grain and fruit or vegetable at snack time. Meat alternates like yogurt are only creditable at breakfast and lunch. This one isn't a true false one, but this is one that we run into constantly. If a baby is transitioning up to the next room, their toddler room, waddler room, whatever you want to call it, you've got an 11-month-old, they've got a mouthful of teeth, they are getting bitey, they are getting pinchy, they are getting aggressive in that baby room, and you don't want the little ones to get hurt. So you say, all right, you're getting to be a big kid. You're going to move up to the next room and hang out with your friends up there. That child's still under 1. Who fills out that baby menu? The classroom where the child was served the meal. So keep in mind, make sure that, if that's your toddler waddler classroom, do they know if that child's going to be eating in that classroom? Do they know how to fill out that menu production record or that infant production record? Do they know how to fill it out? Do they understand what meal pattern is and how to meet it? Make sure they know that information. Otherwise, you'd be smart to send that child back to the infant room for those baby meals because those baby room teachers know what they're doing in there. But wherever the child is eating, that's the teacher that needs to fill that out. Because menus are point of service records. They can't be done after the fact. You can't presume what's happening across the hallway. Do we have any questions about infants? It looks like Carrie's been doing a great job answering a lot of these. So with an 8-month-old, if they're eating some table foods, it's okay to eat lunch provided the parents are okay with that. Yep, we don't care. They're not required to have a whole grain of the day. Infants aren't. Yeah, we're cool with whatever the parents want as far as foods being approved. Oh, that's a good one. Uh, it looks like Carrie's answering all the questions. Is there any other questions about infants? And yeah, she's given you the reminder to go ahead and make sure to put your name and your center name in the email in the chat box. We already discussed if anyone's going to be closed tomorrow. I, oops. Boop, boop. That's the end of your webinar. Make sure you have that information in there so that we know who to send the quizzes to. You're going to get a quiz just like you have done in previous things. If an infant eats at 2 p.m. but leaves before our snack time, you can count that bottle wherever, just because infants don't have meal times. You don't tell a baby when to eat. The baby tells you when it wants to eat. You are not, you are just living in their world. Um, yes, yes, certificates will be emailed. Once we've gotten your quizzes back, so we will get those sent out to you. If you have any questions, please reach out to your monitor, Carrie or Jerisa. Feel free to reach out to me, anything like that, if you have any questions. This has been recorded today, so if there was maybe somebody at your center that wanted to watch and didn't get to tune in, we will have that available. I'm hoping to put that on our YouTube again this year and our website. But yeah, any more questions, just please let us know. And thank you for sitting through this with us.